Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is SockBot. I am sorry for the weird audio quality today, but today I wanted to talk about something that's pretty special, because if you guys didn't know, last week was the anniversary, the 10-year anniversary of Little Big Planet. Gosh, do I even know the topic of my own video? So today, and this is going to be the first and only time I record this, I wanted to talk about, kind of what Little Big Planet has meant to me and kind of what has been so important to me about the game, because it's truly one of my favorite games of all time. And I mean, I wouldn't make all these videos about it if I hadn't. And I think, honestly, it has changed my life to some extent, not just because of YouTube, but like based on the things that I learned from it and like the friendships I formed through it and stuff. And I know that this isn't everybody's relationship with Little Big Planet, but it is mine. So I wanted to share a little bit about that. So in the background here, this is a level I just created last week, and probably the reason why this video took too long to put up, because it's been about 2 weeks since the actual anniversary. But for this level, I wanted to do something special. I was originally going to record using my PlayStation 3 with Little Big Planet 1 to try to kind of create a tribute level, but unfortunately, when I was trying to record that, I ended up, well, one, I didn't have my PlayStation 3, but also I don't really have something to record PlayStation 3 gameplay as it stands, so I decided to create this instead in Little Big Planet 3, which is great for the fact that I can actually post this level since the Little Big Planet 3 servers are down. But at the very minimum, I can at least limit myself, and that's what I did. So I limited myself only to objects, materials, and technology, and basically everything else that was available in Little Big Planet 1. So therefore, there was no use of things like more than 3 layers. There was no use of any of the new technology that you can use, so I had to use some old types of switches. I ended up using a lot of the old materials and the old used objects. And so basically, I decided to create a level that was based kind of off the wedding theme back in Little Big Planet 1. So you can see one of the skull monsters there, but or rather one of the ants. Since you follow the uncle throughout all of that, I decided to make the ant. So I'll talk a little bit more about the level later, but I wanted to start off just going about how I started with Little Big Planet. And so I actually did get Little Big Planet almost exactly when it was released. I believe it was released on the 27th of October in 2008, and I ended up getting it, I think, on either the 29th or the 30th, and I remember that because I got it right before Halloween. And this is when I was in high school, so when I was in high school, or actually, was it? Yeah, it was when I was in high school, so I ended up getting it just before Halloween, and when I got it, before I had any friends play with me or anything, I was just so excited to start the create mode, because I'd never been able to play a game, a AAA title at least, that had that kind of create mode before. So I remember I'd play stuff like Stagecraft and a few other ones, like the RPG Maker. I don't know if you guys have ever played that or remember it at all, but I absolutely love stuff like that. And unfortunately, until recently, I actually was undiagnosed with ADHD, so I had a lot of issues. I would get super stressed out when I was doing one thing for too long, and I also think that has to do with the fact that my dad used to yell at me for playing video games for too long. But regardless, it's getting a little too personal. So basically, I always loved those types of games, and I had never had one that was like a AAA title that did get super popular like Little Big Planet did. But from the beginning, all I wanted to do was create levels. So I remember playing through the campaign as fast as possible, or the story mode, I guess. And so what I started with was just trying to unlock as much as possible. And I remember the wedding was where I really started to love the game. And so I got through the wedding and then basically just jumped into create mode and started making random things that I could. And I've actually shown the first level I ever made on this channel. I'll put a little card up here so you guys can go watch it. But basically from there, I ended up stopping for that day, for my first day or two of play. And then Halloween came. And so when I had people over for Halloween, because I was pretty much the only like kid in my high school that, well, the only one in my friend group anyways, that like actually had people over to do stuff, and I never had any shame around like playing video games with my friends. I was always super excited to play with them, and I think they kind of respected that to some extent, and Little Big Planet was perfect for that, because it also was super easy to pick up and super exciting to get into. So what I did for Halloween is I had people over. And I was like, guys, we're going to be playing this great new game I got. It's really cool. It's 4 player. It's super easy to get into. And for once, I had a bunch of people over to play a game, and they all got like right into it. And they were all super excited about it, which was really cool. I do remember this specifically because we were not too old enough to not go trick or treating. So we did go out trick or treating at some point in the night, and then we came back because we wanted to play more Little Big Planet. And it like I think the point at which I realized this game was going to be big was all of my friends also being excited about it. So it wasn't just me that was excited to create things; it was also my friends that were excited to play all this stuff. And at this point, it was just playing the story mode too. So I think that really says something as to the intricacy of the original story mode, and more specifically, like the depth of the game at its base. So yeah, that was kind of the start of that. And so from then on, I mentioned this before, I did spend a lot of time playing Little Big Planet and creating levels, and I would generally hang out with my friends every weekend if I could. Sometimes twice a weekend, sometimes not that weekend, but kind of depended on it. And I tried my hardest to one week. So like, let's say we play one weekend, and then during the following week I would try to create enough of a level so that the following weekend when we hung out we could test that level and like play through part of it, and then the weekend after that I would have it finished, and so we could play through the whole thing. And eventually I got enough levels for us to just kind of like, we'd hang out and we'd play through some of my levels and then play through the new one, and I always hype them up and text my friends about it. And I don't know how excited they got, but I just thought it was cool that I could do that. So that's what I did. And eventually we got to the point where I was more creating levels for my friends than I was for people online, or for myself, honestly, because there were levels that I would create that ended up being super difficult because I was really bad at balancing things. So like there were points where you could get stuck and you'd have to restart the entire level. There were points where you basically had to have everybody do one specific thing to get through that section. And I actually found those way more fun than like actually making the levels accessible to everybody. Now, obviously, that's not great game design, but it is an experience that I don't think I will ever fully recreate. I mean, I can obviously have friends over now and do the same thing, but I mean, I don't think it's possible to really experience that outside of something like this. And now that I'm like thinking about it more, I'm trying to think of a way I could recreate that for other people. And the only thing I can think is like basically having like a raid team. Like if you ever played an MMO, you could have like a raid team where you go to these super hard levels, and they're meant to require everyone to do everything perfectly and have a specific role. And honestly, that does sound more like a MMO RPG or something like that. But hey, who knows? Maybe you guys will see that on my channel soon. But yeah, that was kind of how things went for me in Little Big Planet 1. And I'm doing this mostly about Little Big Planet 1 because I'm sure I'll do one for Little Big Planet 2 and kind of talk about that. But I will say that this, and then the one for Little Big Planet 3, whenever we hit an anniversary for that, definitely my biggest my biggest stories are around those two. I just noticed that the video is looping here, so I'm not quite sure where I am. So I'm just gonna like pause the recording for a second and make sure that I don't accidentally repeat stuff. Okay, there we go. So yeah, like I said, that was my experience with Little Big Planet 1 at the beginning. I think over the years, it has stayed relatively the same, and I guess this is where I have to get into the kind of sad part. But I do know that recently, I think back in June or July, Little Big Planet 1 actually closed down the servers. Kind of like the Mod Nation Racers and a few of the other like Little Big Planet karting did. And this is kind of something, maybe like a mid-video PSA that I wanted to mention. Um, I understand company-wise why they have to do this. They can't keep these games around forever because no company is going to be around forever, and two, the servers are expensive to keep up. I get that. I think one of the things that kind of makes me sad is that at this point, there's very little there's very few ways to actually share your level. And I'm gonna get emotional about this, but I know that there are levels in Little Big Planet 1 that I made and never posted. And I kind of wish that we could find some way around this. And I think the only thing we can really do is share levels personally, like share my level with you by copying the file somewhere and posting it online. But um, I do I do miss a lot of what we got with Little Big Planet 1. And I think I don't really want to go into a lot of the personal reasons for that. I know this is a personal video, but I think for this mid video argument or whatever, there's a huge thing that is lost with removing that kind of online play. Specifically, a lot of levels that worked in Little Big Planet 1, but don't work in future things. So, like, even some of the, what do you call it? The bomb levels. I don't know if you remember those, but there used to be this huge trend. I talk about this all the time about survival levels, and I know that I've talked negatively about them before, but honestly, they're amazing. They're really fun to play, and I obviously do have my issues with them because I think sometimes they can be lazy. But I remember, like I said before, when we weren't just playing my own levels, because I'm not a huge narcissist. Well, not that much, but maybe a little bit. But regardless, I didn't. The issue that we ran into, especially now knowing that the servers are off, is a lot of these bomb levels were, one, never upgraded for Little Big Planet 2 or 3, and more importantly, they needed to be because there are certain aspects of them that were broken. And I know this happened for a lot of people's levels. They actually did a really good job of porting all the levels over to Little Big Planet, from Little Big Planet 1 to 2 to 3. And so a lot of them work perfectly, but not all of them. And I think that that's something they should have expected. And maybe perhaps given us the option to like check our levels, I guess. I mean, I'm sure that's probably what we could have been doing for the past few years, but a lot of people, more importantly, just didn't update their levels, and that's fine. I don't expect everyone who stopped playing the game to go back and start playing for some reason or other, but one of the issues here is now they can't, and now we can't. And I think there's a reason why people don't like their levels, like, being allowed to copy their levels onto your own personal device because then you can repost them. But there's two options here, and this I think is really good idea for whenever these servers goes down, because it's not always going to be like we have another Little Big Planet coming out so that the servers can stay online for the newer games, and that pretty much solves all the problems. At some point, that's not going to happen. And so for these levels that we've created, that we spent so much time on, obviously at this point, I don't want people to be allowed to copy them to their own thing and repost them and pretend that they're their own levels. And I'm sure a lot of people don't want that either. But the thing is, when it comes to the end of the game cycle, like let's say the last 2 or 3 months, or even the last year of the cycle, they should give us the option to do that. Change every single level to be able to copy it to your own PlayStation so that you can save every single level and download it, and you'll just basically have that level forever. I think there's an alternate to this, which is basically to allow people to download levels but not necessarily be able to post them, so kind of have like a marker on that level so you can download it to play it offline and play it when the servers eventually go down years later, but not be allowed to ever repost that. And obviously those have to be different things, because some people like their levels being able to download and then other players will remix their levels, but I think the majority of people would love an option like that. And I don't know, maybe they'll add it at some point, but I think more importantly than that is just giving some way for us to go back and get those levels, whether it's like putting it on the Media Molecule website, which is a lot easier, and just having all of the level files there so you can search through them and download whichever ones you want and then put them onto your hard drive, so that even in the future they don't have a full Little Big Planet server where you can play online, but at least you can go back and download some levels and play other levels, and it keeps that endless cycle of content going, even significantly past all of the difficulty that comes with ending the servers. Now, I know that this is a very long mid-level PS, or mid-video PSA, sorry, video level, I always get confused. But I think I don't know, it's something that I think is interesting enough to talk about, especially as we come through the first game of Little Big Planet of this series that I love so much, that's actually reaching that point where it's just done. And I know that obviously that game will always be there. There's always going to be value to having the original Little Big Planet, but just reducing that, just taking the servers down does reduce that a lot. And I think that there are other things they can do to kind of bring that back. I mean, look at what people did to bring World of Warcraft Classic back. If you don't play World of Warcraft or have never played World of Warcraft, I think you can still appreciate this kind of story. Blizzard recently announced, I think a year or so ago, that they're relaunching an entire server based on their classic vanilla World of Warcraft, so no expansions, nothing like that, because they had to, when they upgraded it with expansions and stuff, it got more and more different and more and more different, and so bringing back that classic experience was worth it, and obviously had a huge player base that was willing to do it. Now, I don't think this is the case for all games, but it was the case for that, and for an MMO especially that's constantly evolving, it makes a little bit more sense. But given how much of Little Big Planet is online, I do think it's important for Media Molecule to realize that that kind of need is going to show up the further away we get, especially because now that Sumo Digital is dealing with Little Big Planet and Media Molecule's moved on to Dreams, that whole like personality to Little Big Planet is eventually going to go away. I mean, Sumo Digital's smaller than Media Molecule and presumably doesn't have as much support from Sony, but I don't see them staying around quite as long as I do Media Molecule, who's consistently moving forward. But anyways, long video PSA. I just hope that of these suggestions I provided, they can figure out something that kind of allows us to keep that around, or at the very least, some like half online, half offline thing where even if we can't play online with other players via the Media Molecule servers, at least we can play offline with any of the levels that were posted during the time the game existed. I mean, even give us the option to bring those files back onto our PCs and upload them ourselves. Who knows? Maybe we could create a community just entirely based around this, you know, on the Reddit forum or something like that. The only issue there is I just don't feel like there would be enough people who would be willing to take their levels, put them on a hard drive, and post them online, versus if Media Molecule just did the entire thing themselves. And obviously, this isn't easy, and obviously, it's not simple, and maybe it's not possible. Maybe they don't have those files anymore, but it's definitely something that came to mind. So, going back to my experience with Little Big Planet. Sorry, this is a lot of talking. I don't normally film 15 minutes of talking in one video, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about where I am now with Little Big Planet and kind of what is exciting to me from this point forward. So the more I've played Little Big Planet 3, especially for this video, the more I've kind of gotten back into the flow of creating and the flow of making a full level and really getting into the theme of that level. And so I'm not sure what's playing in the background right now, but at the end of this level, I created a little tribute where I added specifically a entire hallway of all of the original concepts from Little Big Planet, the little paintings that you can get from, I think, acing the levels, or maybe it's just completing the entire section. And so I think that has made me realize that Dreams is not going to replace the series of Little Big Planet. I think that Little Big Planet 3 may be as far as we go with Little Big Planet, and from this point we could just get incremental upgrades, but it also worries me as to what Sumo Digital is going to do with the game. I cannot imagine there's not going to be another Little Big Planet. Even with Dreams as like the quote-unquote spiritual successor, there's too much put into the style of Little Big Planet, too much put into the characters and all of that for them to not create another game. And that is exciting to me, and the more I played this game, the more I realized that, because Dreams is going to be fantastic. Dreams is going to have a huge player base, and a huge part of that is going to be directly from Little Big Planet, especially the creators. But I don't think Little Big Planet is going to go away for the sole reason that there are so many people that will play Little Big Planet and get into it that are either more casual creators, I mean, honestly, I would consider myself that, but more importantly, that are there for the game and the character of Little Big Planet, not necessarily the, oh gosh, what's the word? The actual potential of Little Big Planet. They're not there for the potential of Little Big Planet. They're there for the character and for the levels that you can create. And honestly, that's a huge part of why I like Little Big Planet so much. Dreams definitely has a character to it, and I appreciate that, because although it may take away from the full potential of like a lot of games will look semi-Dreams like if they're made in Dreams. I think it's obviously possible to make them incredibly unique, but I feel like there definitely is an aesthetic to Dreams, and you can move away from that aesthetic, but at the base, that aesthetic's still going to be there, and so it definitely has a personality, and I was worried about that originally, but I'm not worried about it anymore. But Little Big Planet has that kind of personality, I mean, not the same personality, but a personality to a far greater extent than Dreams did, or Dreams does, rather. And that personality is not just going to go away. So at the 10th anniversary of Little Big Planet, I think I can confidently say that, assuming these games continue to sell, because that's obviously important when it comes to a company, Little Big Planet's not going anywhere. Or more specifically, I suppose it is going places as opposed to just staying still and not going anywhere. And that's something that excites me. And I'm excited to see where it goes, but I'm also, I don't know, semi nervous because, especially once Dreams comes out, I do hope that all of you and other people that are really into this whole creation aspect will go back and play it. I don't think at this point it's necessary to have one creation tool that everything goes into. And perhaps that's why I get so passionate about Little Big Planet servers going down is because it doesn't quite matter that the new game exists. The old game still has a place, and as Dreams comes out, Little Big Planet still has a place within creation. I'm always going to enjoy creating things like this. And sure, I can, like Media Molecule did, if you haven't seen that, it's truly incredible. I can absolutely go back and kind of look at this and create this entire level within Dreams using Little Big Planet characters that I made within Dreams. But I don't always want to have to do that. I mean, it'd be great if it worked perfectly, but this is a separate system. And I think that's one thing that I've learned while getting excited about Dreams is that it's not necessary that Little Big Planet disappears for Dreams to exist, if that makes sense. Now, obviously, I know that the creation community is still somewhat small. It's pretty big based on Little Big Planet, but it's not as huge as it was when Little Big Planet started, and it's not the biggest gaming community in all. So I suppose what I'm getting at is, yes, it is definitely possible to have multiple of these games at once. And yes, this is not a gimmick. And yes, I think games like this will continue to exist, especially now we've realized that they can be mainstream like Little Big Planet. I just hope that the companies like Sumo Digital and Media Molecule and Sony supporting both of them continue to support any type of game like this because they can be very successful. And I hope that supporting these, they don't come to the point of, if a game like this fails, blaming it on the concept of the game in general, as opposed to just saying, well, it's not the game that failed, or sorry, it's not the game type that failed, but the game itself. Because Little Big Planet 3 was not as popular as the other games, and I'll be the first to say that. I think it may be because it was more glitchy, it may be because of the new developers, it may be because the advertising was crap. And Media Molecule has only recently kind of stepped it up with Dreams, but more importantly, I want to emphasize that just because Little Big Planet 3 didn't do as well as I wanted it to, just because Dreams might not sell as many copies as the original Little Big Planet did, which I don't think is true. I think it's going to go crazy. Like honest prediction, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. But even if that's the case, we know that it's not the game. We know that Little Big Planet was crazy successful because of what it was, and because of the personality it provided, and because it appealed to so many different types of people. It doesn't have to do with the fact that it was so heavily based in create mode. But regardless, I think I'm dragging this out because I think about it constantly, and the anxieties of my mind are an enigma. But this is already a very long recording, so I hope you all are doing very well. Let me know if you guys have any memories of your first experience with Little Big Planet, whether it be 1, 2, or 3. Obviously, this is just mine with 1 because I have a lot of experiences with all of them, and that's not me trying to sound like a douche. That's just like, this is already a 20-minute video, and I could go on and on. So let me know what you guys think. I know that this was a bit of a ranty video, but I figured, if anything, I deserve to make a ranty video for the anniversary of my favorite game of all time, or, well, definitely one of them, if not the only one. So, yeah, hope you all are doing well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Like the video if you like it. Subscribe if you want to. No pressure, as always. I love you guys, and I hope you all are doing very well. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I will talk to you soon. And goodbye. You can't see my face, but I'm still doing the arms thing. Bye.